as a biologist, do I want to document the decline of species? Like, to me, it was obvious. Of course, this is going to be a need, but it was a struggle. I remember the real estate agent saying,
you didn't even know what a rootstock was.
I didn't know what a rootstock. And I meant, what you're saying? It's on what's M26?
Yeah, you were 30 years kind of ahead.
I was way too far ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, way too far. It was.
Hey, Pops, are you ready for today's episode?
I'm ready. And I think you should be ready too, because it relates to everyone who's going to have a project, who's going to think of, if I had some land. What land? What kind of land? The beginning is definitely not the same as the last 15 years. So for our journey, it's looking at the first 15 years, but you'll get so many lessons.
I actually think this might be the most popular episode we do up to date, because I'm sure there's so many people that actually want to know the backstory. And I don't know if you've ever spoken about it completely. I don't even know if I know it, to be honest.
I speak mainly about the journey of the permaculture orchard. So I've been doing this for 30 years, but the first 15 was the organic orchard.
Well, before we even get into that, I remember when I was a kid, we've spoken about it on another episode, but growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. And what I guess I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know, is why you would ever decide to go into farming or even like owning an orchard. Like when you were younger, I know you were always into wildlife, but to then do a switch up from, I guess, what you used to do, like
landscape architecture and the plans and design consulting.
Sure. But I remember when I was a kid, you would tell me stories about like you back in school, and you would like sit in blinds and count birds and stuff. So how do you transition from going into something like that into something, I want to say, completely different?
I don't look at it as completely different. It's an evolution. It's a change. It's a change. I mean, I'm still sitting and looking at birds a lot.
Sure.
That's for sure. But it's I guess the main thing is why? Why do that? And it really comes down, I remember this was where the office was at that time, and realizing, wow, it's springtime. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out, and I'm stuck in the office.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, man, this is not what I signed up for. I mean, when you say, yes, I was doing observations of birds, and I did a lot of things relating to wildlife. And that was outside. Most of it was outside. And then I got into landscape architecture and realized I'd be inside.
But even that, how do you make that transition from going in the field to then being like, I want to create plans? Like, you know what I mean? Like, even for people that don't know you, that's kind of a 180. So I guess to start, why did you decide you went to school? Because a lot of people don't know this too, but you went to school for like a long time.
Yeah, I was in university for all of my 20s.
Which to me is wild.
I started with a bachelor's in wildlife management. Then I did a master's in animal behavior.
Okay.
That was in North Carolina. I did my field work.
That's what I remember you telling me about.
Yeah, that was neat. I mean, I spent 500 hours in 3 months. So it was 8-hour days every day for 3 months up in a tower, watching birds. I can remember my fellow grad students at that time saying, wow, look at you, lucky you, you're going to North Carolina, and it's winter coming. And I thought, yeah, it's going to be nice. I think in the second week I was there, I went and bought a snowsuit because although it seems like it's nice, and it is when you're out of the wind, but it was a large lake. It's the Matamesquite National Wildlife Refuge, and it's a big body of water. It's about 5 miles across and 15 miles wide. And when the wind is coming from the north and is going over the water, and you're the first thing the wind hits, and I was up 15 feet up. So, and I'd have this blind, so I would have these windows that would open so I could look out. And I can just remember sitting there, and I was just, you know how if you're in a big wind and it's cold, you're just tearing?
Yeah.
And I can remember looking out there, and I was just thinking, I'm going to run out of tears because my eyes were just tearing, constantly trying to look out. And I thought, I am freezing my
Okay.
my butt off sitting up there. So yes, it is warmer when you're out of the wind and down on the ground, but out on the water, especially higher up where nothing stops the
For
wind.
sure. There's nothing to block it. You're the, like you said, you're the first in line.
So it was fun. I mean, it was fun. It was
So then how come you didn't continue in that? You can't have a career in that, or?
the reason I didn't continue was right when I finished. Actually, when I finished my bachelor's, Canada was not doing very well financially. And the government that came in, the conservative government, realized, you know what, we can't continue like this. We've got to cut the budget.
Okay.
And they cut the budget real hard, which was, in retrospect, it was exactly what was needed. But for what I was looking to do, I remember they cut so many jobs in the environment. And there were lots of biologists with 10 years of experience that
No
job.
Okay.
So I thought, here I am, I'm graduating.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come out, and there's full of people.
And you've already put in how many years of school at this point?
That was just 3 years at that point.
And still.
And there were lots of people who were way experienced. And I thought, okay, so now the decision wasn't that hard, I realized.
Okay.
Maybe just give it another 2 or 3 years. I'll go back to school and see how the situation shakes out by then. So that's when I did the field work in North Carolina. And so I finished there and realized, okay, you know what? The one thing I realized when I finished there and looking, by then I knew what people were going to work in and so on. And I thought, as a biologist, do I want to document the decline of species? Because a lot of the work was really monitoring, evaluating, checking species that were in danger and the populations were dropping. And I thought, no, I didn't sign up to document declines.
Yeah, I get that. Okay.
My idea was I want more wildlife. I want there to be a lot more wildlife. So, but what can I do? And I thought, as a biologist, I'm not the person who's going to make that change. And I looked around and thought, who makes decisions for the land? There were two of them. There was farmers, and then there was, I thought, landscape architects, which work on projects that affect areas, and you're doing a design.
Okay, that makes sense. Because then the landscape architecture that you used to do, I remember it was pretty niche. And especially, I think you're ahead of
niche.
You're probably ahead of your time.
30 years, yeah.
Okay, but it was basically, if I'm getting this right, it was to attract wildlife to your client's yard.
Clients, yeah, and it could have been private. It could be, I did parks.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, how can you, but my thesis when I graduated was increasing or decreasing wildlife in urban and suburban areas. So that was...
Decrease? Why would you want to decrease?
Well, because it's the same idea. If you say you want to increase them, you would add these shrubs and these trees. Well, if you want to decrease them, sometimes it's take them out.
Okay.
I mean, it's just the same principle, but in reverse. So I thought, hey, if I can do one, I can do the other. I was never asked to do a decreasing wildlife.
Would you have done it?
I would have, because I could affect the change the simplest. Like we have geese around here that come into the parks, and they spend a lot of money trying to get rid of the geese. And I look at it and I go, it's a no-brainer. It's so simple. Why? Because they are looking for the biggest wide open grassy areas they can find.
Okay.
Why aren't they in this park, but they're in that park? All the places they go to have the largest open grassy areas.
That makes sense.
Why? Because they're standing on their feet. They got to
see the predators.
Right.
And they can,
so they need wide open. So I thought,
just add some shrubs,
add some hedges, and break it up. Make no piece bigger than, let's say, 100 meters. Even 100 meters is a lot.
See, but you're saying this as if it's super obvious. But
it is super to me.
To
me, it's obvious. I've done this so long. I could look at an area and I know exactly, do this, you'll have more.
Yeah.
Do this, you'll have less. It's just because I've done it so long. I used to say for my clients, getting the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before.
And it's simply knowing, I always focused on the limiting factor. Every species has something that why aren't there more of these? Well, you don't have the nest habitat. You don't have the food. You don't have the water. There's always something. And I can look, because I've done it for so long, I can look at an area and go, you know what?
You're
just
missing
add
this, or
add water here, add this.
Well,
and
I even remember when we were kids, like we would go hiking. Granted, when I was a kid, I hated it, but we would go. And I remember hiking, and he would be able to be like, oh, well, this plant, you could use this for this. And this plant grows here because, like, as a kid, I just kind of, I guess, took it for granted. But now that I'm older, I'm realizing, we've spoken about it before, like if stuff really popped off, I don't think I'm lasting more than 2 weeks. But you actually know what all these things are and what you can use.
A lot of them. Yes,
a lot of them. Like, so I guess that transition, because you went to school for plants as well, like after or
in landscape architecture, it was, yes, you did have, I did it in actually I had more courses doing my bachelor's. There's more courses. I had forestry. I had a few other courses on plants. But in landscape architecture, you had all the plants that would be used in the landscape. So you also use the native plants and so on, the trees and shrubs.
Because this is before the internet and everything too. So
yes,
that's why I'm saying it's impressive now that I look back that you knew what a majority of these different plants were.
Well, when you work in that, you learn it. Like if I tell you a way of editing, of course I know that because you do it. The more you do it, you get into it. It becomes and that brings back to when we do videos, when we're doing something. Zachary is always my feedback for newbies, because I'll be speaking things.
Like he just said, for him, of course, but I'm like, Pops, most people don't know that to get rid of geese, you put shrubs, but you in your head, you're like, well, of course. So I have to reel them back a lot of the time, and that's
good, because it's what you're assuming. You assume when I'm speaking about things, sometimes I assume everybody
knows it. Yeah.
And especially for the Permaculture Orchard. And because I've done it for so long, there's so many things, I'll say, just take that rootstock.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, so coming back to when we bought the orchard, I realized, I remember the real estate agent saying,
you didn't even know what a rootstock was. I didn't know
what a rootstock. And I meant, what you're saying, it's on, what's M26?
Yeah.
It's the rootstock. What's the rootstock? And then he had to explain. And so I came into this, I had the wildlife background, I had the design, I had the plants background, I had all that. But I didn't know really how to grow things. I knew to put, but to grow them, what they need, or replanting very specifically for fruit, I didn't know anything about that. Nothing. That rootstock one was a good one. So I empathize when I'm talking and I think, oh yeah, I guess people don't know that. And it's good to come back and
you don't take it negatively either when I bring it up. You're just like,
no, because I need to realize, oh yeah, how many people would know that? Not that many, maybe.
Yeah.
So those are all good, and I need to be placed back in their shoes, which is what.
Like you were saying, even for me with editing, I'm constantly learning. There's stuff that I know how to do, but it just takes that little spark, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, and I reverse engineer everything. And so you did that, and then you transitioned to your own company where you were designing.
Actually, while I was in school, I started. So the first two, even in the first summer after the first year of landscape architecture, I started the office. And
I remember when I was younger too, you had clients here and there, but you weren't making money because, like you said, or I said, you were 30 years kind of ahead.
I was way too far ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, way too far. It was I realized, hey, people are going to want to have designs to get more birds or frogs or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like,
now it's big. Now people want that. And now you don't even want to do it anymore.
I don't want to do that anymore. But now would be easy.
Yes.
And this episode is proudly brought to you by my very own Masterclass. Use code POP250 to save $250 off the Masterclass bundle. Masterclass contains 11 different courses that you can buy separately. However, the complete Masterclass has you covered from A to Z, and it's really my life's work. Masterclass is the ultimate tool to help you start a successful permaculture orchard or planting. Not sure about how to start, or maybe you've already started, but now you feel you're stuck. Purchasing the Masterclass gives you access to the VIP group, where you'll be able to meet other like-minded, very interesting permaculturists and bounce ideas off each other. The VIP group is where I spend most of my time answering questions, and it's never been easier to get in contact with me or ask me a question. Want to learn more? Go to permaculture.study and start each course today for free. Don't forget to use code POP250. It'll save you $250 off the Masterclass bundle. And now back to the episode. That was really confirming what I knew, that I'm not in today.
Yeah.
I'm never really thinking today. I'm thinking, like, I can see what's going to happen in the deserts. I can see what's going to happen in the oceans.
I get it too, because my friends are like, yeah, like, I don't know, you just think 10 years out. And I really do, but I must get that from you, because...
Well, it's just... real. If you focus on today, you're focusing on today's problems.
You can't.
I focus
far out.
And I realize most of the time it's 20 or 30 years ahead.
You're even ahead of me.
Because when I did to me, it was obvious. Of course, this is going to be a need, but it was a struggle. I mean, having the office, wanting to, and I did want to specialize. People were asking me to do, could you do that? And I went, no, I'll refer you to somebody, work with them, because I tried to focus on the things relating to wildlife.
Okay, what you enjoyed. And even the referring, I do that. Like, I get people constantly asking me, hey, do you want to do this? And I refer them to other people. Yeah. And I learned that from you. And they look at me and they're like,
why would you give away work?
Yeah, know? Like, I'm offering you money, you don't want to do. And I'm like, nah, maybe it's something that I don't enjoy, or I don't know, I don't have time. So I'll take something from you and I'll be like, here, go see this person. And
it comes back, because those people, 100%. When you send 2 or 3 clients to them, and then when they get a client and then the person starts talking, I'd love to get a whole lot more birds. First thing they would go, you got to go see
this guy.
Go see Stefan. He knows that stuff.
So you did that. I guess you could say you made a living, but you weren't making...
I wasn't making a lot. I was making a living, but at that time, there was the transition. So I did the office for 10 years. I thought it was 20, but it seemed like 20, but it was actually about 10 years.
Okay.
And I realized that there was a few things I realized. One, everything was custom. And that's where the Masterclass kind of comes in nowadays. Every project was unique. So when we'd work with a client and we're doing whatever it was, the design I'd come up with, it was for their property. Sure. It was specific to theirs.
Yeah, you can't really have cookie cutters.
And I thought, no cookie cutters. There's got to be a way of having cookie cutters. And so that was where I started to realize, you know what? If I want to make an impact that I was hoping to make doing designs to increase wildlife, there's got to be a way that it'll apply to a lot more people.
Okay.
And so with the Masterclass, the idea was, look, I've done courses. I did courses in the States.
Even the observation course that you have in the Masterclass, everything we just spoke about, like for you, you're like, well, it's super obvious. But you go in and you actually dissect how you get to that. And you give people like a checklist and different exercises of what they can do so that they can get to that.
Yeah. And it takes practice.
Sure.
It's a skill, observing. I mean, I can walk a site
but you give very like thorough details about all the stuff you've learned over 30 years, and you put it into one, and that's just one of the 11 courses.
Because that one actually relates a lot to what I learned as a biologist, because you have to be good at observing.
But then you explain how they can apply it on their own property. And I feel like that is like, when I was editing that, I'm like, man, I don't have an orchard, but I could use this in X, Y, and Z. Like, there's a lot of really good tidbits and exercises.
I think it's one of the most underrated courses in the Masterclass.
100%.
Because it's specifically saying observation. And there's a reason, because in permaculture, the first principle is observing and interacting.
Sure, but people will say that, but then...
Okay, observe. What am I... And they're looking around. Well, that's just one small part of observing.
Yeah.
Because even looking, do they know what they're looking at? Do they know how to look?
When? Yeah, you go, I know.
It goes deep. It's really breaking down what it takes to observe. So,
well, it comes back to those hours in your tower, and you're, I guess, just being like, oh, okay.
Hey, 500 hours. That was just that fall. That was just that one. And 2 summers before, 2 summers before, when I worked at the Raptor Center studying kestrels. I mean, that was 8 hours a day watching kestrels and opening nests and counting and weighing and
8 hours a day for how long?
For 2 summers.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 6 months.
That's hours again.
So that was just work time, because I love doing this. So even not work time, I mean, I kind of ruined my eyes at that time, because I couldn't afford, so I used a cheaper pair of binoculars that ended up, if they're out of line and you still use them, not a good strategy.
So to go back to the not having money part. So you have this, you establish this new office, like you would call it, and you have a couple of niche clients here and there. You're not making a ton of money. You had a little bit of inheritance. You had 3 kids and a wife.
Yeah.
So again, now, and I don't know how many
context.
I don't know how much debt you were in for student loans, because you went to school forever. But then you decide to take what little bit of inheritance you had left. And like you said, you don't know what a rootstock is at this point, but you in your mind, something was like, I want to be, let's say, a farmer, or I want to own an orchard. Walk people through how you come to that then, because that's just, for a lot of people, including myself, that's kind of wild.
Let me just go back, because you mentioned I did have some student debt, but as I started to work, that was the first thing. I didn't want to carry, I didn't want to carry debt even in buying the farm, because I knew that if you have the bank owns the property then, no matter what, until you've paid that last dollar, the bank has a say. I didn't want somebody to have a say on the farm. So I didn't want to have a debt. And that was one of the reasons we bought where we bought. What was your question? I was thinking about the debt.
It was basically how you came to, like, with everything you had going on with the family, and you weren't making money with the office.
Yeah.
Why did you then decide to go, I guess, further in debt, or do another 180 from the original 180 to purchase an orchard?
Well, you said we had 2 kids at the time, just you and Eli.
Yes.
Emily wasn't around yet.
True.
So,
but still.
Yeah. But one of the things I realized as you guys were little is I thought, do I want you guys to just get exposure in the city? Because we're living in the city. I thought, I knew my experience growing up in the country, and I thought, there's so much more. And I think a big reason people are disconnected from nature is they don't have exposure to nature. They're not, they can't just roam, if you like. And I thought, we need to have a little more area. So you guys, and a large part of it was you. So there was a few factors. I wanted this for you. I wanted it for me, in that there were things that I wanted to try. I wanted to experiment. I wanted to have a place that I could consider kind of my lab to just try. There were so many things. You got to realize, if you spend 10 years in school, you do a lot of reading. You do a lot of studying. You get a lot of ideas. And I mean, you know how ideas is not my weak point. I mean, as I'm reading, I'm thinking, he could. And so I started that. In those days, I had the idea books ahead of that. But that was where, I was adding ideas that it was like building up. And it's kind of like a pressure cooker. It's building, and you feel like you're going to explode, because you have to do, not just know, because it's not enough to know. For me, it isn't. I needed to be able to do. So I needed some place to do these things. And it was just about that time, too, that I had learned about permaculture. So I found this book.
Okay.
At the Ecological Agriculture Project Library at McGill. That was 1990. The book had just kind of come out. And I remember finding that book, and I was like,
I want to try this.
not only that, I realized that my 10 years in school
Was kind of niche for
was
that.
was this packaged it in a way that made sense. Now I kind of knew why. It's almost like it was custom made for me.
Yeah.
It was like, it combines the animals, nature, the plants, and design.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, this is exactly. And when I read, I remember I saw it, I ordered it right away. It was like, I got to get this book. I got the book, and for 3 weeks, all I did was I read and reread in chapters.
This is before you bought the orchard, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It was 1990. So,
Okay.
but that was like, oh my gosh! Now all of my 10 years
Is not a waste.
is not I knew it wasn't a waste, but it was like, now I need to take what I learned and apply it.
Okay. Because I was going to say then, like you were saying that part of it was for us, but you guys used to take us hiking and camping, so
Yeah.
that was outside. And you could have went the other route where you just buy a cottage or something where you don't have to take care of trees. You don't have to take care of. So you decided that after reading this book, this was something that interested you. And I remember you say it all the time. His original idea, you decided to then, like, I guess, had you already thought of the permaculture orchard, or now at this point you just wanted an orchard?
At that point, I just thought, oh, you know what? First, I wanted some land.
Okay.
I wanted land, ideally with fruit trees, because I knew I wanted to make fruit trees a part of it.
And you didn't care what kind of fruit tree?
Well,
or, like,
basically in Quebec,
Yeah, I
it
know, but
was
that-
just apples.
Okay.
There was no options. There was a few people had other trees, maybe some pear trees, but it was not.
just
It was
apples.
always apples, pears over there, apples there, and it was monocultures anyway. So this one, and
because you talk about it too in then another one of your courses is like site selection.
yeah.
And you go into how you so you regret buying this orchard now because
Because it was an orchard.
well,
Well, it made it more expensive.
okay.
Because it was it was a mature, it was 10 years old, so it was in full production, monoculture apple orchard. And
Non-organic.
Non-organic. So if you ever have the misfortune of inheriting a monoculture orchard, listen carefully, because these things matter. I just thought it would be a shortcut. I thought it would be an easier way to integrate and diversify. But I mean, one of the problems is that I knew a lot of things in other areas, but I did not know a lot of things about growing. And what I did know about growing, I knew for a garden.
Okay.
I knew in yard scale and so on.
So you just decided to go with 0 to 100.
It was like a lot of my decisions are not, I'm going to dabble. No, it's,
that makes a lot of sense now. Okay.
there's a podcast called the All In Podcast. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of me. It's all in.
Yeah.
So when I decided, it was like, well, I talked about it with your mother, and it was like,
Which I'm surprised she actually went along with that, to be honest.
well, she went along with it because I had inheritance. My parents had both died younger than I am. And so they left us some. We sold the house, and they had a cottage. We sold that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay,
This is what I have left.
that's what I
over.
have left.
This is my budget.
That was the budget.
So was that a big reason why you bought that piece of land in particular?
Absolutely, because
Okay.
we did look at other ones. We looked at,
Because now you explain where you kind of ideally want to buy,
Yeah.
and where you bought is the
it's
complete
not in the
opposite.
ideal. No. So we started kind of like, imagine a donut, or like when you drop a drop of water in water, it makes these rings,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Well, we started in the close rings, close to the city, because at that time I had also learned from the guy, Booker T. Watley, how to make $100,000 on 25 acres. And I remember being in Guelph in the library at the time. That book was on the new book shelf. And I thought, whoa. And I started reading that. And that was one piece of the puzzle that was like, that makes so much sense.
Well, we edited that in that course, the site selection.
Oh,
so I know exactly who you're talking
that's
about.
In marketing because...
Yeah, marketing, you're right, yes. So you took from a book and you applied it to your own, I guess, project. But what he says or explains, I'm assuming you read that book after you purchased the orchard?
I read the book way before, but it's like anything. This would be the ideal.
Yeah. So for context, we also live in Montreal. Like that's where we live, which is a huge city. I don't know how it compares to the rest of Canada, but it's big.
3 million people. So
yeah. So you
close to the city. We started looking close, like 20 minutes, because Booker T. Watley says, you want to be on a hard surface road no more than 30 minutes from a population of at least 30,000 people.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, we got way more than that in Montreal. So let's just go 20 minutes. So and looking at properties there budget, was like, whoa, that's blown completely. That won't work. So then we went to the next ring. So then it's like 30, 35 minutes away or 40 minutes. And so we just looked at properties and it was like, wow, that's getting far. 40 minutes and 45 minutes. And wow. And one of the problems was, the way the land setup is, farms are getting bigger. So if they were being sold, it was 125 acres of orchard.
Yeah.
And, 150 acres of field. And it's like, I don't need
That's overwhelming.
That's too much. I knew that I did not need that much land because when growing up, we had 100 acres. And I knew that you're familiar with the first 5-10 acres,
and then you don't even
the rest,
touch the rest
is
a couple times a year.
There's part of it I never went.
Oh, okay.
It was like that far. The road didn't even go there. We had a road, and our road didn't even go to the end of the property. So,
and then I'm sure a lot of people are wondering. Then you couldn't purchase or ask to purchase just a plot of that. Was that not a thing back then?
I didn't know about it.
Okay.
So. Usually no, because you have to buy the whole property, but you could lease. And that's one of the things I really recommend people consider leasing, a long-term lease.
Yeah.
Because
you could practice on somebody else's.
You practice, you start, and then if you realize, wow, for what I want to do, this is the wrong place.
Yeah.
If that's what you did, you started, and now you realize it's the wrong place.
And then a lot of people might be like, yeah, but then I'm going to have to restart. But I actually agree with what you say because you can learn. Let's say a long-term lease is what, 10 years?
Well, you could have a long-term lease, but you could have a clause in there that you'll evaluate it for 2 years and you can stop.
Okay. Or sometimes maybe you could factor in a purchase down the line or something.
That's a lease with an option to buy.
Sure.
Yes.
But then if you practice on somebody else's property, I feel like if you've learned what you needed to learn to restart on your own thing, I feel like it would be exponentially quicker.
Yeah. And once you're in an area, you realize if you're even a little bit connected in the community and you get to know a few people, there's a lot of properties never list in the country. Like they just don't go up. They don't go through an agent. Somebody's talking, I'm thinking of selling. Oh, really? And that's discussed in a coffee shop or in the local restaurant or something. And, oh, yeah, I heard
so-and-so.
Joe there, he wants to sell. Or he just wants to sell part of it. Maybe he has 3 farms and he wants to sell one this year, Oh, yeah, really? Well, And they always most often they look more favorably to somebody who's
local in
the area. Yeah. So it's a win no matter how you look at it. So,
well, even Dirk from the Masterclass, that's what he's doing in Ireland. Yeah, he's renting land from a guy.
I think it's rent. I don't think he bought it.
No, I think he said he rents it.
Yeah, he rents it.
So that too, he's practicing on somebody.
He planted an orchard on somebody else's property. And that works very well. I say, try to get a 25-year lease because 25 years, I mean, your trees will be
established.
Well, not only that, they'll be starting to go downhill by 25, at least some on some rootstocks. And so it's like, look, if the farmer who you're renting from is very happy with what you're doing, in 10 years, you could say, could we make a new 25 years? Sure.
And I'm sure then, like, let's say for our example, if that were to happen and somebody leased land, when you pass, like we've talked about, I don't know if I want to continue doing that. So then who knows? Maybe it comes up in the discussion that, you know what, you've been here for X amount of years. If you want, this is the price, and you just...
Yeah. And you can, a lease, it's a contract. You could put anything you want in a contract. You can say, look, in my 25-year lease, I want to have first right to purchase. And that's what I say. Buy a lease. Take a lease
that's
with
smart.
an option to buy.
Smart.
And you're first in line. If the person passes away and the property they're considering, the successors are considering selling, you have first right.
Sure.
They set the price, whatever, or you may have negotiated what the price may be, and like that's it. You have then if you can afford it, you take it on.
Sure. And then by doing that too, let's say you did stuff and you're not happy with it, because that could be a possibility too.
Sure.
Then you don't have the hassle of trying to find somebody that's going to buy this property that you yourself don't even like. You know what I mean?
And think of it: if you leave behind an orchard that in 5 years it's already producing, it's a value. You've added a lot of value to that land.
Just the amount in trees.
The person think, oh, well, I want to do grain crops and I'm going to, it's not that hard to knock out an orchard. You can just run a bulldozer over it, or, we did it by hand, but we did. With equipment, you can do it way easier and yank out trees in a day. You could yank out a whole orchard. So yeah, but it does leave a value, and it's a worthwhile thing. So that's what I going back to buying that orchard, there were a lot of things that made that it wasn't a great idea, but looking at it after 30 years, it doesn't matter in the end, because it's a practice. It's to learn so many things.
But the point that I see now too, again, because I grew up experiencing it, the soil that you have there, it's pretty much a beach. Like
it is a beach.
Yeah, or it was a beach. Yeah. So like you can like go, and as soon as you lift up that top patch of grass with a little bit of topsoil, like you're getting sand.
So it was great to work. It was fun when you guys were little, because you had a huge sandbox.
Sure. And we've talked about on other podcasts, we dug a pool and we did, so you're not even hitting rocks. You're just hitting pure beach sand. So that too, in that course, you provide them with a checklist. You didn't have that checklist. When you purchased that, did you even know that you were buying a beach?
I did have...
Because there's a quarry.
I did have some of the items on the checklist, because I do have a checklist in the Masterclass.
Site selection. Yes.
And that checklist is really...
like I feel like just that checklist is worth
it's worth a lot, because if you forget one of those things on the checklist and you go, I didn't know we had to consider that.
Yeah.
Man.
But again, for a newbie like me, I wouldn't know. Okay, there's some of the things on the checklist I'm like, okay, sure. But there's a lot that I, like, even if I'm buying a rental property, like, I remember you came with me. Remember we went to go see a couple duplexes in a different city, not Montreal. And I remember, I don't know if it was you or the realtor that took a tennis ball and they just put it in the middle of the floor, and the whole tennis ball just took off to the wall.
Yeah.
And I remember you looked at me and you're like, yeah, no, like, don't touch this. You walk in there, there's furniture, you can't tell. I guess it was the realtor. Just knowing that little trick of bringing a tennis ball, like, that saved me. I don't know how much that building was.
Yeah, because that indicated there's something wrong. And in that case, it was the foundation was crumbling.
Yes. So it cost me like $100,000 or $110,000 to fix whatever that thing was. Yeah. So that little checklist of experience or whatever in the long run saves you. So you bought this, you did know it was beach sand, and you still, I guess it was the best that you could afford.
That was really the only factor. We had looked, and this was the smallest piece of land that we had seen.
How much is it?
It's not 2 years.
It's not anywhere near 100 acres.
No, it's 12 acres.
Yeah.
It was 12 and 22 because it was divided by the lake next door.
Oh, okay.
Because originally the farmer, 2 farmers back, basically owned all that land. He started a little gravel pit. He dug, and then he sold the gravel pit to the neighbor. But he owned the 2 farms on each side.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So when it was up for sale, it was orchard and the other farm, which was really 9 greenhouses mainly.
Okay.
And some cropland. And I looked at it and I went, I don't want anything to do with those greenhouses, because I knew that's what sunk the guy, because it was that's intense. That you got to be there every
Like
day.
you need a team. You can't do that by yourself.
You had 8 people working for him.
And at that time too, like we were saying, he doesn't have money to hire all kinds of people. So when you purchased it, it was pretty much you.
That's it.
Yeah.
So no, it was, but the orchard, I thought I'm interested in that. And so because the wasn't an agent, it was a representative from the Farm Credit, which is the ones who hold the final guarantee on mortgage.
Okay.
So the Farm Credit guarantees the mortgage. So when they have someone, and he had asked them, he says, I want out, I want to sell.
Okay. Find somebody.
So they had put it up, and as soon as it came up, she called me and she says, she knew because I'd been working with them for 2 years.
Okay, yeah.
And she said, I got what you're looking, this is really what you're looking for. And it's smaller and this and that. But when I looked, and I was like, that's 34 acres. That's smaller, yes, but I don't want that part. And because the way it was laid out, it was separate lots. And anyway, I said, look,
I just want that.
I want that. I don't care what you have to do, but I want that. And because it was them holding it.
I mean, and it's very
they had
niche.
Notaries, they had the lawyers.
Sure.
They could look at it and go, okay, yes, we can parcel that off, and it could be a separate, because it's viable.
Which makes sense though too, because now that I know what you're talking about, I feel like it'd be easier to sell them separately than together. So I don't know.
Well, and it ended up, they sold the one to us, and they sold the other one after a year, I think. So it was easier to sell it because the two were not really...
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not really...
No, they were not really the same kind of operation.
Mm-hmm. So you bought the orchard, and the guy before you, it was a monoculture apple orchard, and he was spraying pesticides.
Yeah.
So you inherit this, and
I didn't inherit that. I inherited some money.
No, but I mean, like you inherited, I guess, the responsibility of either continuing to spray,
right,
or just stop spraying. Like I don't know how that works too.
Yeah. That's what I did.
You just stopped.
Yeah, I didn't spray.
Why?
Well, because I'm interested in encouraging animals and wildlife, and to me, going out and killing, even if it's insects, and saying, okay, we're going to spray for these insects, that was like, no, I don't. That's not what I'm signing up to do this for. Which in the end was quite a mistake, because I wanted to do organic, first of all.
Yeah.
But organic is certainly not no spray.
No.
Like there's not many organic that
which
are
I don't
no
think
spray.
a lot of people know that, because even me, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but there's a big difference in the products that are sprayed. So you look at a pesticide and it's like, yeah, it could be whatever, but it kills the things. But an organic pesticide, it could kill more. Like there are some specific non-organic pesticides that can target certain groups of insects, for example.
So you're still killing some. You're just not killing.
You have others in organic that also are like that, but you have some that are broad spectrum that'll kill any insect, but they break down. So they're made from a plant, or they're made some way that they're natural, and they break down quickly. So there's no residue. You take the non-organic one and it's sprayed and it's there. Some of them, like there's still DDT coming down in the rain. It's like, how is DDT? Well, because it's so persistent for so long.
Many years, yeah.
Once you put it out there, it's out there. It's got a huge, long life. So different ones have shorter lifespan. Anyway, so I should have sprayed with an organic spray.
Like right away, you mean?
Yeah, the first year.
You just bought it.
I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to grow. I didn't know what a rootstock was. So I remember it was like, oh, this is nice. Now we got this orchard. And the first year.
So the first year, like.
The first year was nice. Like the crop was quite nice because it had been nuked so much for so long.
Yeah. So you're like, this is great. This is going to be easy.
Well, Yeah. I kind of thought that it would be, oh, this will be nice. This will be easy. The first year we kind of had a break because the crop was coming nice and there was so little disease pressure and so on. But then, anyway, actually that first, so we bought after the crop harvest so that they could get the harvest off. We bought in December. So then coming the first spring, that was nice. It was like, wow. That was the first year where I realized, man, oh man, look, I had never seen dandelion like that, or dandelion. It was
I remember because
yellow.
yeah, you took pictures when you
pictures,
first, and it's just pictures of like, I don't know how old I would have been.
You were probably 3 years old.
Sure. And it's just a sea of yellow.
Yeah. If you bent down, you didn't see green. You just saw yellow.
Yeah. And now, okay, like you still have dandelions, but it's, no, you can't even, it's not comparable.
Well, that was...
And that was because of the pesticides.
Partly, yeah. It was that. It was leaching of calcium, because a lot of these things, especially the fertilizers, will leach out certain elements. And so, yeah, it was... The soil was not healthy. I remember that first year we started to plant some, I just wanted a little more diversity. So we were digging, we dug for about 100 plants. And I remember Mama found one worm. She says, hey, look, there's a worm here.
One worm, yeah.
And I thought, whoa.
Which, again...
100 holes, one worm.
Again, today, I remember last season, we did a worm indicator video.
Yeah.
And we dug the first hole, and I don't know how many, they were massive.
10, 20 in one hole. Yeah. That's indicators. So worms are an indicator. Like, how bad is the soil? It was really bad. It was hydroponic. Okay. It was a substrate. The sand just held the plants, and they were just pumping stuff in to get, and they got good crops, but at what cost?
Yeah.
So the cost was they mined out almost all the organic matter. It was pure. I remember because of the herbicide strips under the tree rows, it was a beach. You know, you could dig in the sand anywhere. There was nothing. There was nothing holding it. There was no plants. There was no roots, and there was no organic matter. So that kind of was the transition, the first thing. We also hit the 2 coldest winters that we have had in the last 70 years.
Okay.
So the first winter, so we bought in December, it was fine.
The first crop was great.
The first crop was good. And that winter, in the first winter that it was ours, we hit minus 38, which is almost minus 40, because minus 40 is minus 40 Celsius in Fahrenheit. So it was a cold, cold year. It was a record for a long time. And that weakened, it killed some trees outright. There was some, these were all government recommended ones to put it on this rootstock, it's good. And it killed a lot of trees, and it weakened a lot of them. Like there was a lot that were, they weren't dead, but geez, you could tell.
Not doing good.
Not well at all. They had suffered a lot of damage.
And that is in the front, or it was throughout the whole orchard?
It was throughout, there was a lot of them.
Towards the back?
The middle and the back, especially in the middle. The middle got the hardest. And then the second winter, we had minus 34. So that wasn't as bad, but on trees that were already weakened, it just killed them. So after those 2 winters, we were down from 4,000 trees, which was what we bought. We were down to 3. We lost 1,000. But that was standard for all of southern Quebec. Everybody on average lost 25%. And that 25% was cultivars that had been recommended, and it's like, forget it. They're not that hardy. That's not a good combination.
So now you're, let's say, the 3 years in at this point, 4 years in?
3 years, yeah.
Okay, and now what are you thinking in your head? Like you got...
Well, I'm thinking, I got a lot of great firewood.
Okay, half glass, glass half full.
It's like, how can I make something out of this? So we had lots of good firewood for many years. But it's like, okay... So I always try to look on the bright side.
Sure.
So the bright side of it was, you know what? We're cutting these trees. The roots are dead. Hey, we got trees. We got space to start replanting in a diversity. But now, okay, again, the problem is I don't have money.
For
all
trees,
the money that I had went into purchasing. So I used everything and a little bit more to purchase.
Okay.
But the problem with that is anytime now you want to do something, you want to replant something, you need some money.
Yeah.
And so that was my mistake in the sense that, look, that's why leasing's a good thing. You have a little bit of money saved up, lease, it costs a little bit every year.
Well, not only that, you don't have to put down this huge
chunk or
capital.
A mortgage.
Yeah.
Because the problem is for many people, you buy this property, you have a mortgage.
Sure.
And I've seen it so many times. Now you have this mortgage, but you don't know how to make the land give you a living. So you
That's a
have
good
this, and then you go, okay,
I want to do this.
I
but
want to do this.
I can't.
And now you end up, well, what I was doing, I'm pretty good at. I can make a living if I work at this job in town or remotely. So your main occupation is not the farm now. Your main occupation is doing this other thing.
Just to feed.
Your hobby or
which you can't
your
really
hope.
do. Sure.
And so that's
a good point.
That's what I've seen this so many times, that people buy. And the second big mistake they do is they buy, look, the house is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, but let's do some renos. Yeah, but where's that money coming from? So a lot of times now you've got a mortgage and maybe you're having to borrow more, or you're using what you have as savings to do renos on the house. Look, if the house isn't leaking and if it's livable, it doesn't have to be fancy. It's livable.
Yeah. Put it off for a little
Take
bit.
that money and put it in the land, which will then give you, it'll pay.
I agree.
That Solomon thing, make ready your work in the field and afterwards build your house. There is a reason for that, because if you get your field or your crop
in order
ready, they will produce, they'll give you an income that then you could build your house.
Sure. And you'll have a little bit extra because it'll be established. So every year you'll just, I agree.
That's the thing with orchard, trees, even blueberries or raspberries.
But I mean, I feel like you could do that in life in general. Like no matter what you're into.
The thing with those kind of crops is that the sooner you get them in, it's like money in the bank.
Sure.
The older they get, the more valuable they get. So if you can get an extra 2 years of compounding, even if, let's say, you say, okay, we buy this place, we can't live there yet, we're still working in town, we can take what money we have, we put the orchard in, we've seen where it's the best, we do that, and then we're still working in. For the first 2-3 years, those trees aren't giving you anything.
No, but at least
but they're in.
True.
So then when you go, okay, now we can move to the place.
You've saved up more money. You have more time.
But the trees are in. That's, people often forget. You think of annual crops. You think of a garden that you plant in the spring, you harvest in the fall. And that's valuable. But you have to redo it next year. You have to do it. While trees, once you put them in, they'll be there for 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. And giving you crops most years.
Sure.
So that's what it takes a little adjusting in your thinking.
But it makes a lot of sense. Honestly, that's a really good tip. So you started, you had your organic, you just went cold turkey on it. You let it just, I guess, settle for a couple years. You had the bad winters. Going through all of that, I remember at a certain point you were certified organic?
Yeah.
Like you decided?
It took us, from the beginning, that first spring, we did the...
Whatever the paperwork.
Yeah, the paperwork. So we started. You have a 3-year transition.
Okay, I was just going to ask.
That means you're in transition to organic, but you can't sell your crop as organic, even though you can have done everything to be, but your soil is not. And that makes sense because
100%. You still like
soil does not transition overnight.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I know now how I could get it. I could get soil now to be the equivalent of a full transition 3-year organic. I could get it in 3 months. And we talk about that in the soil course.
Yeah.
And there are ways you could get, it's not just, but mostly it's getting the life back in the soil.
Even that, the way you explain that is really smart. From just being honest, from like a newbie or whatever point of view. Yeah, what you explain, it's like, man, that makes so much sense. But
everything makes sense, but it's not the things we're really exposed to.
Yeah. So you okay, to get back to this, so then you do organic and now you're no longer certified organic. Yeah. And that might come to a shock to quite a few people because they're like, well, what do you mean? So why did you decide to stop doing that?
I asked the people, because we were already doing membership. In the early years, we did membership. So I'd ask people who'd come to pick, and I'd say, we've been certified for, I think we were certified 6-7 years. And I'd say they're changing the
standards or criteria.
What they changed was you used to have the farm certified.
Okay.
So whatever we would produce, everything would be certified.
crop and animals?
And animals.
Really?
Yeah, as long as we're raising them that way.
Okay.
But then they changed it where each production would have to be certified. So if we wanted to sell chickens,
Yeah, that makes sense.
now
then.
we had to get certification
For
for,
the chickens
chickens
and
and
then
certification for apples. And then if we grew pears and plums and cherries, we had to
Okay.
get and each one was an extra 50. And it's like, well, I want diversity right from the start. So it was like, wow, it went from $500 a year to it would have been over $1,000. And it's like, you know how much we have to sell just to pay for that more.
And at that point, you're not really making
And I'm
money.
not
are you?
making that much. I mean, we were making, depending what we made a lot more some years with the animals.
Yes.
But it was like, wow, do I want to do all that? So I asked the people, I said, would it make a difference? No, we come.
Yeah, they
we
see
how
first person.
So
Yeah.
and I realized then that organic certification is great when you're buying in a store. You're buying where you don't deal with the person raising or growing it. And that's good, because at least you have somebody who's saying, yes, it is. But if you're buying directly from the farmer, even at a farmer's market, or if you go to the farm, even better, because like you see, if people came and I don't know, there's like
Well, they see all
in the
the-
first years where we use surround, which is a clay, like you see that there's stuff on the trees. You
like on the
sprayed
leaves,
something. Yes,
and
I sprayed something. So it's like, okay. And they were like, no, it doesn't make any difference to us. So I realized, okay, I could keep the prices where they were, because if I was charged more for certification, I
You'd
have
have
to
to
charge
increase
more.
the prices. Sure. Yeah.
So it was like, no, I want people to get a good price for what they buy. They've already made the effort of coming out to the farm, which is outside the 30 minutes.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So it's like they made a sacrifice
Paid
to
their
come
membership
out and paid the membership. So it's like, no, I'd like to keep it that way. So I realized, okay, if I'm dealing with people who I can say we maintain standards or beyond, now I can easily
call it
say we're
beyond organic.
beyond the
Yeah.
standards of organic,
Yes.
but we're not certified. And to me, that's fine. I've
But
been
you
in
built
it,
up,
I've seen,
and like
people
you said,
have
you've built up such a loyal
right. So it's like,
clientele.
I don't need it. And it's great when you start because it's somebody guaranteeing for you.
Okay. Yeah.
But like, I don't, the
No,
members,
now it sells itself.
the members
Yes.
bring new members, which
Yes.
is the best members, because it's people who are brought by someone who tells them
knows.
about it, who know. And so now it's like a real business where there's repeat and people are bringing. So
Yeah.
I'm not having to
You don't even
promote
need to
the
sell it
farm
now.
and
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah.
So
Plus with the YouTube channel and everything. Yes.
yeah, so it works now, and it's like anything. If you stick with it,
Yep.
and I was listening to a video this morning, and the guy said, yeah, one of the first things is just stick with it, even when you think you can't stick with it, because it's like you go through the valley and it's tough. But if you keep with it, yes, it does get better, because there's a tough time around 3 to 5 years. It's tough. You've got all that investment gone in. You're starting to get some crop, but it's not enough. And those are tough years. Those first 5, after 7, it's
You
like
can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, your things are producing.
So let me flip that on you then. If you stick with it, so you now up to this point, you've done this, you've done that. Now you decide that, you know what, this monoculture organic, I don't want to stick with it. I want to just, son, you're not doing anything. Come and help me. We're gonna rip out the whole front, which is I don't know how many acres. And again, like you said, can't afford machines. So we're there with what, like one of the pickaxe and just axes and shovels ripping up. How many trees were in that original block that we tore out?
Well, you were working mostly on the front block, so there would have
That's
been
what I'm talking about.
There probably would have been 450 trees.
Okay, so and that took
you'd work out a tree for about 4 or 5 minutes to get it. Some were
sometimes
easier,
even longer.
sometimes longer.
Yes.
But on average, 4 or 5 minutes per tree.
And you left in, do you know how many you left in? Because it wasn't a lot.
No, I left maybe 10 or 15.
Okay. Because all the trees in that block were just not.
Some had died through those the cold spell. Others, if there was something wrong with them, it's like, no, it's not worth keeping. But there were some that were very nice still. And
So you kept those. And then, so now you had your book that you had read years ago at this point, and you had your orchard for years. You can see that it's not working the way that you intended it to work. So now you're like, you know what? And you say this all the time. After it was planted, you didn't talk about it for years because you said yourself you weren't sure if it was going to work. So what was it that you were like, you know what? I don't want to stick with it, and I'm going to just try this crazy fringe thing that I read in a book years ago, and now is the time to do it?
Well, in the back of my mind, I knew what I wanted it to be, but then I knew what I had. And I'm, just the economics of it had to, some way it had to pay for itself. So you remember, we did juice, we did sheep, we did turkey, we did chickens. We did a lot of things just to bring some, because the idea was the farm, even if it's not making a lot, as long there's cost, just having it, there's cost. So as long as it covers itself, whatever I make outside the farm.
This will be an experiment.
Yeah, it's like, and I just didn't want it to be a drain. But it was, many years, it was still what I'd make outside would go into the farm, but not enough with the black hole, and it wouldn't come out. Too.
Yeah.
So that was the definitely those first 15 years were the really toughest. And then on top of it, I kind of wish I had kept a log of what my thinking was, because to go from an orchard that was still, it had declined because now the trees were getting older, and to realize, okay, you know what, this won't work. I'm going to take it out and restart. And I can really remember I was in that course with Dr. Lespinasse, and they were talking about how they re-establish orchards in France. And so he was saying, yeah, there's teams of 3 people. They go through. The first one makes the big cut. He cuts and he moves the top off and he puts it in the aisle. And the second one comes in, makes the final cut, puts the graft in, and then he moves to the next tree. And the third guy puts the putty and he tapes up and seals the tree, and it's done. And he said 3 guys do 1 hectare, which is 2.5 acres a day. And I remember hearing that and thinking, they don't tear out and replant. This was 2009. I did that course. So you remember 2008? No, 2006, we tore out the orchard.
Okay.
So it was 3 years after. And I heard that and I thought, are you telling me they don't tear out the... No, he says, why tear out the trees?
And you had just done it?
You don't tear out the trees because you have a root that's 10, 15, 20 years old. So you take advantage of that strong root. And I'm thinking, Dad, we had 20-year roots and we tore them out. And I thought, oh my gosh. Like we could have kept a third of the trees to work in the trios. We could have kept every third tree as an apple. And even if it wasn't in the right order exactly, apple, pear, could have been pear, apple. We could make it work. And I thought, I took out all those trees to replant little trees that had a hard time in the beginning because they were so small.
And the beach sand.
I thought, man, that lesson, if somebody would hear that and go, just that, I would have saved
Well, there you go.
If
you made it an hour into this podcast, there's your...
Save weeks of work. Just learn how to... And it's so easy once you've done a few to overgraft and you start off and your tree in 3 years is not just bigger. It's really starting to produce anyway.
Well, like I said, especially in your case with the soil that you had, those rootstock had already been established. They've already gone through the hard times, and
that would have been so much better. You learn. I've got a lot of tens of thousands of lessons that I've paid for to learn the hard way.
So then learning, who are your mentors, I guess, that you kind of, again, took, obviously he's a big inspiration, but you were one of the first people to bring this concept, especially here where we are. But who had you followed? Because at this point, it's what, 2006 you were saying?
Yeah, 2000...
Like when you tore
2006 we tore out. 2007 we replanted.
So the internet is around, but it's not like it is now.
It's not what it was. And like I tell people, man, you don't realize what you've got. Like you could
say it all the time.
And if you study like I did, just studying one book, if you study for 3 weeks where you actually put serious effort, you know. Even if you're working and you go, I got 6 hours in the evening, put in 6 hours, 7 days a week for 3 weeks. You'll get the equivalent of a course, a university course in growing whatever, you know. You absolutely could. So learn as much as you can. And I mean, when we started, it was just that one book primarily. So adapting Mollison's book to our context. And I remember I thought, you know what, there's going to be all kinds of examples. People have done this all over the place, and there's so many examples. But I thought, yeah, well, I don't know of anybody in our area here that's done that. So I just thought, well, I'll just do it, you know. It was like I had been thinking of this already for over 15 years.
Yeah. So
I knew, in fact, I even put in a proposal the first year we bought the farm, and we just owned it. But for spring, I put in a proposal basically proposing what we have in the permaculture orchard: diversity of trees, shrubs, perennials, and animals. And I remember putting in that proposal to test that and see how it works in an orchard.
Did you even get an answer?
Yeah, I got an answer. The guy, when I spoke to him, because I called saying, like, you don't reply of what's going on. Oh, you're the one. He said, we had such a good laugh.
Oh, they told you that?
Yeah. He said, we had such a good laugh about that. I was like, insulting. I thought, what are you talking a good laugh? He said, that was just so funny, that idea.
That'll never work.
Yeah, it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, I'm not saying if you can. I'm just saying.
I want to.
Yeah, you know, like it's a viable proposal. It's a good idea that needs testing. That's the idea of a proposal. It's, I propose this. Do you fund it?
So I guess you didn't get funded.
No, I didn't get funded at all. Actually, I did get, because I was still kind of in school mode, and so I did get a study on wasps. Remember Miss Kendra?
Yes.
So I proposed another study to say, can we increase habitat? I was in that habitat mode.
Sure.
Can we increase habitat to attract wasps to control caterpillars? And we got that one. So that paid for Kendra for the whole summer, and a few pieces of, I remember we got a tiller. We needed a few things. So we could buy a few things with the grant money and to get started a little bit more, but to create habitat. And it just happened. Actually, it was the first winter. So the winter was very cold. So she started in the spring on this project. But because it had been so cold, all the wasps, almost all of them died because they overwinter as adults. And it was just so cold, most of them died. So when we were sampling and trying to find if they'd work, there was so few wasps. It was like, oh, we saw a wasp today. So it was like, oh, gee, you know, just timing didn't work. It was a great idea. The proposal was good, and we set it up well. But anyway,
didn't have the results. And that's another thing you've spoken about. I think we've done a couple of videos on YouTube, is the caterpillar problem that you had. And that was, I guess, another major reason why you decided on the permaculture orchard, or to pull trigger on doing it.
That was like, we had it. It was bad.
So when they were spraying, there was no caterpillars.
Yeah, you kill everything.
Okay.
So yeah, it was, I mean, they just controlled caterpillars. But see, that's always, is the caterpillar the problem? No. Is this insect the problem?
It comes back to your observation, because most people, I feel myself included, I would just get super frustrated. I'm not saying I would go back to spraying, but I don't know what I would have done. You decided to take a step back and just watch, or I guess all the years and years.
Well, having seen them so many years. To me, it was this book. This is the one that, you know, The Soil and Health. Sir Albert Howard, he talks that, you know, insects and pests are not the problem. They're our professors.
Yes, you say
and they point to the problem. So I said, okay.
What's the problem?
What's the problem? I got these caterpillars. What's the problem? And I remember the year we had it really, like, it would be bad every 3 or 4 years. But one year, it's like every 30 years, it's really bad.
Well, I even remember I was young, and I remember being like, ooh.
Like there's caterpillars eating everything.
Everything.
Yeah. So, and again, I could have sprayed, even I think in those years we still were organic. I could have sprayed, but it was like,
that's like a Band-Aid kind of?
Yeah, that's going to get rid of the symptom.
Yeah.
So that's really what happens. When you spray, you get rid of the symptom, but you're not solving the why do you have them.
Like you say too, then you're on the treadmill. So
You're
every year
absolutely.
you're going to have to...
Because when you spray for that pest,
Yeah.
you're also, in most cases, you're killing the
wasps
predators.
Yeah, okay.
So you've gotten rid of the prey.
Yeah.
And, having studied ecology, there's 2 cycles. There's the prey, which increases really fast, and the predators who increase very slowly.
Lag behind?
They
Yeah.
always lag. They're always slower to increase. So what I've realized is that if I had all the pests in the orchard, if I had them at a low level all the time,
Yeah.
then I could maintain their special, because some of them are special predators, some they're general. If I could maintain a good population of predators, then when there's a year, there's more. The predators are there. They take advantage of it. They multiply quicker because they're already high enough in number, and they bring that peak. It's
Down.
like a peak down to a level where it's okay.
It's controllable. Yeah.
So that was the biggest one. And I remember that year when the caterpillars were so bad, and it's like, and I was like, God, what am I going to do? And thinking back to what he said, they're not the pest. They should be our professor. So it was like, caterpillar, what are you trying to teach me? And that was like that. When you hear a caterpillar, it could have been in my head, whatever. But when it's clear as day that it comes back and it says, you've created a buffet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, I knew exactly what it meant. Like,
Because it's all the same trees.
all
They're
the
touching.
same.
So that
It's
the damn things
perfect.
don't even
It's
have
like,
to crawl on the ground.
No, it's a great environment. Like you
Yeah.
create a buffet and then you're complaining when this insect takes advantage of the buffet.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the final thing where I realized, okay, I got to get this. This is, and honestly, I tried. I mean, if you said, what's the best training to try to solve that problem? I had it. I knew wildlife. I knew design. I was basically the best equipped to look at it and say, this isn't working. It's not an ecosystem. It's too simplified. There's one species, which is apple. And then it's set up to be great for the pest. That's how it's set up. So I was like, okay, I got to change. The ecosystem is broken.
It's not working. Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that's why now I say, flee the monoculture. It's all broken.
Well, now it's crazy because, again, as somebody that's not in this niche but lived through it, I see all the comments too on YouTube because we check them all. And you do these videos, and of course you're going to have people that are doubters and whatnot. But to see where it was and to see what it's become, it's actually wild. Because, so for context, you do still get caterpillars.
Yeah, we want caterpillars.
But I mean, it's nowhere near like... Last year or 2 years ago when we were filming B-roll.
Big year too. It was
that was a big year.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because I needed B-roll of these
and it
damn
was
caterpillars.
Hard to find.
Yes,
I know.
And a lot of them were like up, so you'd have to the angle wouldn't work, so I'd have to go look for another one. And whereas before, what he's talking about, it was everywhere. Like it looked bad. Like there was more caterpillars than leaves on a majority of his trees.
And there were a lot of trees. I can remember some of those worst years was you'd get 10 trees
in a row. Yes.
Yeah.
So
all complete, nothing left.
Yes. Yeah. So now the way that it's planted is, I'm assuming maybe they like apple, but then beside it you have your honey locust or black locust. They don't like that.
Yeah.
So
they won't go that way.
No. And then the pear, maybe they don't like that variety of pear,
Right.
so they're trapped. Like you say, they're trapped on an island.
Yeah.
And now because you have so many, you have wasp, you have praying mantis. For the Masterclass, you were, when we filmed that in studio, you were saying you hadn't seen a praying mantis in I don't know how many years. And then how many did we see?
Like 3 or 4 that next day out.
Yeah. Like now, so you have that. You have the amount of birds. Like it becomes, like you said, it's almost a non-issue, and you're almost actually excited to see it because you see the progress. And I'm sure it reminds you of those times.
Every time. And that's why I say people can't imagine. It went from, we had other pests, but the caterpillar by far was the worst. And to go from the absolute worst pest, with the monoculture organic orchard, and after, even though it was organic, but it wasn't certified.
Yeah.
And to now realize that I am excited to see those caterpillars. Like I go in, I got caterpillars in here.
Yeah.
Why would I be excited? They used to be the worst pest. Because like I said, I always want to have some to feed the specialized predators, to keep the predators fed.
Sure.
Because I know that even if they're on, and we saw one tree, I remember, I think it was a choke cherry, and it had 2 or 3 nests on one tree. But each nest would never last. If we found it
dead.
3 days later, they were gone.
Yeah, they're like mummified and stuff.
Because that was the wasps, the parasitic wasps. Anyway, there's several types of insects that kill the caterpillars, but now I know they'll be gone. So when I see them, and for a few years I was putting flagging tape so I could see down, there's a nest there, I want to see.
Yeah.
And I'd go, and that was the observation part, so I wanted to see. And like now I know that here's the wasp, this wasp. And remember, was it last year we were filming where here was a nest of caterpillars, and there were 2 wasps coming in and just picking them off.
I didn't have my
camera. They were biting them.
Yes.
I took it on the phone, but they were biting the pieces off the caterpillar. And they were trying desperately. Some would just drop to the ground.
Which even for me is wild, because that goes back to, you saw that. There's no way a regular person would see it. And right away you called me over. And I don't have my camera to document it, but I definitely remember that.
So that was, like you said, when we replanted, I didn't say anything.
No.
I mean, I'm big on, if I find it's good, I'll talk about it. But I wasn't convinced that this would work. I didn't know for sure. I replanted. This was kind of a crazy experiment, and something that people would have laughed about.
Well, they did laugh about it.
And to now have it and go, how is this going to work?
And not only that, but now you have people coming from all over the place to come and look at it so they can try and take something back.
But
and
it was, it was a step of faith. So like I said,
10, 20, 30 years in the future.
I'm ahead to, and think of it. I had been thinking of this 15 years before I did it.
Yeah.
So that's why now when people say, I'm looking at your videos. I want to do this.
Yeah.
I understand there's a lag between you want to do this, you're learning about it, and then you actually start. So that's why I encourage people, just start in your backyard. If you have a little bit of space, put 2 trios. If you could put 6 trees, those 2 trios will work the same way as 200 trees.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Proof of concept.
You'll learn, the shrubs. And if you get the propagation course or look up lots of videos on propagation, you can have all your perennials and all your shrubs, which actually, when you price it out, the most expensive part to replant a permaculture orchard isn't the trees. It's the perennials and the shrubs, because there's so many of them. So your trees will cost $30 or $20, whatever. But your 2 shrubs can be $20, and your perennials 10 at even $3 each. 20. Yeah, let's say 15.
But you break down break down the whole thing in propagation.
Right. So if you have them, even in 2 trios in the backyard, you could have enough material to increase by 10 times in 2 years.
Yeah.
So you could go from 2 trios worth to have enough plant material to go to 20 trios worth in just 2 years.
Like you'll have extra and you could sell even if you decide you want a side hustle.
Yeah, it's a great... I mean, I look at how many things it's like we've got them, but I'll mow them or whatever. It's like there's so much material.
Or people come and you're just giving them away and go dig it up.
That's the Mollison's 3 phases of abundance.
Yeah.
We've reached all the abundance. We have an abundance of diversity. That's the first step. Then we have abundance of propagation material. And abundance means you're pruning and you're just throwing the stuff out because you've got so much of it. And then the third one is abundance of production. So like last year was a great year to show.
You had people just coming in, and picking to bring to food banks.
We had 2 big groups come in just to glean, and they did part of it, but there was so much food.
Yeah.
So much food. So, and people can't imagine how much food you'll produce on a small area, but it's like I don't feel guilty anymore about having food wasting, because it's like, look, there's just going to be so much. You'll have all that you need. You can't even, in many cases, you won't even be able to give it all away because there's just so much of it. And that's when abundance becomes a problem, you have a good problem. That's it. There can be, all along the way, there has been all kinds of bad problems, but when you reach the point where it's like that, and this is only, so there is the first 15 years, which was monoculture, stopping that, restarting in the permaculture orchard. I mean, after it didn't even take 15. I mean, after about...
But now you're flying now. It's
and the crazy thing is the maintenance.
Yeah, there's like hardly anything.
Has gone way down because the plants...
Which is crazy because you're getting older, so no offense, but technically you can't do as much, but now you don't need to.
Right. Yeah. We went to prune the other day and it's like, you know what, even if I don't prune it all this year, and I won't, there's no way I'll prune it all. It's like, it doesn't matter. Some of the trees haven't been pruned ever. We just didn't prune. Others haven't been done in 3 years, but you look at them and it's like...
Well, because you're constantly, so I guess now, like you say, you always think 10 years, 20, 30 into the future. So where do you see the permaculture orchard in the next 10 years? Because you're still running tests.
Yeah.
Like it's basically become your lab, like your lab at this point.
Yeah, a few things I want to experiment still. I mean, the main one is the overhead system. So instead of having to go around the spray, because I still do, didn't last year, but in most years I have been spraying way because we still have trees that are not resistant. So spraying way just means the fruit will be nicer. So to do that effectively, instead of taking a day to spray, I could get it all done in less than an hour.
A couple hours? Oh, no, okay.
In less than an hour.
Okay.
If I use the overhead. So that would be the next push, would be to get the full overhead system. And I mean, I mentioned it in the film, there's a little piece in there showing the overhead, how it was frost protection, but I'll also be able to spray. And I wasn't spraying at the time.
And again, how old is that?
That's 10 years now.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah. So getting the overhead will be a big plus. I want to get back to using rock dust again. I haven't since remember playing in the rock dust pile.
Yeah, sounds like a YouTube video.
Yeah, that'll be another nice one. I'd like to put in biochar. We got all those branch piles. I'd like to burn them, create biochar.
Sounds like another YouTube video.
Yeah, so there's several things that I'd like to tweak. I want to try some deep planting where we dig an 8-foot deep hole and plant that way. There's, the fun part. Now it's fun.
Now it's fun
now
because
it's a lab.
All his ideas we could turn into YouTube videos.
Yeah, and even if the project fails in a conventional sense of, that didn't work, that's not failure. It just didn't work that way, or it didn't work that way that year, like when we replanted by seed.
Yeah.
The idea was, man, maybe we could seed the orchard. And we tried it, and we had the 2 driest springs we've had in 20 years.
Yeah.
It just didn't rain all spring. So, of course, the seeds didn't germinate, and then the voles ate up the seeds. So it was like, well, that was a failure. Okay, so we replanted seedlings that we dug up from other parts of the orchard and put them in, but they're tiny. And now this year we'll actually, remember some of the bigger ones are about that big. Well, this year those will be over 1 meter high. So you'll start to see trees in there.
Well, now me too, being back with you, that's where it's going to be interesting because, like I said, so much content coming for YouTube. For those of you that watch the YouTube channel, I feel like we have some banger YouTube videos coming this season.
Well, like you said, we planned out the year, and it's like,
we did, and we got some good ones.
We're trying, instead of just putting out quantity, we're really looking to give the best content we can, things that are interesting, that are new, it's like, wow, I didn't know that.
Well, especially now, because it's, like you said, 15 years. So what you've learned in 15 years, and I said he's still figuring, tweaking, whatever, we won't give it away, but we have some good ideas that you know what? For all the people that, like he always says, just start, and we understand that it can be daunting. I feel like we got some stuff coming that will definitely help a lot of the people just start.
Yep.
That being said, good job, Pops.